Tonight's State of the Union address raised serious concerns about President Trump's cognitive and physical fitness for office. His delivery was halting and disjointed, his tone combative toward Democrats, and there were stretches where even his own party seemed uncertain when to applaud, a striking contrast to the usually reliable Republican enthusiasm. Most notable, however, was what appeared to be a quiet retreat from his central 2024 campaign promise of tackling the affordability crisis. For a president who built his electoral case on economic relief for ordinary Americans, walking back that commitment in his very first address to Congress is a significant moment, one that deserves far more scrutiny than the spectacle of the evening itself.
Now, the same people in this chamber who voted for those disasters suddenly used the word affordability, a word, they just used it. Somebody gave it to them, knowing full well that they caused and created the increased prices that all of our citizens had to endure. You caused that problem. You caused that problem. They knew their statements were a lie. They knew it. They knew their statements were a dirty, rotten lie. Their policies created the high prices. Our policies are rapidly ending them. We are doing really well. Those prices are plummeting downward. The price of eggs is down 60%, Madam Secretary. Thank you. The cost of chicken, butter, fruit, hotels, automobiles, rent is lower today than when I took office by a lot. And even beef, which was very high, is starting to come down significantly. Just hold on a little while. We're getting it down.
What followed only deepened those concerns. Trump's delivery grew increasingly strained as the address continued, the slurring more pronounced, the confusion more apparent. Rather than making a compelling case for his administration's direction, he leaned heavily on a familiar but hollow tactic, spotlighting individuals in the crowd and asking the room to applaud them. It was a transparent attempt to generate enthusiasm in a speech that offered little of substance, and it suggested his handlers were reluctant to trust him with any real policy argument that required sustained clarity or persuasion. The affordability crisis, the very issue that drove millions to the polls in 2024, was addressed not with solutions but with figures that strained credibility. Claiming victories on cost of living while prices continue to rise is a difficult sell under any circumstances, and it landed poorly here. When Democrats in the chamber refused to play along, Trump responded with visible frustration, openly chastising them for not standing and applauding. It was a revealing moment, a president more focused on the optics of approval than on the substance of governance, lashing out when that approval wasn't forthcoming.
Nobody stands up. These people are crazy, I'm telling you. They're crazy. We're lucky we have a country. With people like this, Democrats are destroying our country, but we've stopped it just in the nick of time, didn't we?
When Democrats refused to applaud, Trump's frustration became almost bewildering to watch. Here was a president seemingly unable to understand why an opposition party wouldn't cheer for an economic record defined by rising prices and dubious statistics, demanding approval in a room where he had done little to earn it. Having exhausted his talking points on the economy, a mix of inflated figures and policies that exist more in rhetoric than in reality, Trump pivoted to what he considers his other great triumph: ending wars. It is a claim he returns to often and with evident pride. But the moment quickly unraveled. Despite the names of the relevant countries presumably being right in front of him, he fumbled through them, losing his place and his thread in a way that was difficult to watch. It was one of the starker illustrations of the evening, a man straining to project strength and command while visibly struggling with the most basic demands of the moment.
Kosovo and Serbia, Israel and Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia, Armenia and Azerbaijan, the Congo and Rwanda, and of course the war in Gaza, which proceeds at a very low level. It's just about there. Now, when it comes to the corruption that is plundering, it's plundering America.
The geographic confusion was hard to overlook. Serbia, not exactly an obscure nation, appeared to give him pause, which did little to reinforce the narrative of a dealmaker who had single-handedly reshaped global conflict. The speech, reportedly running close to 3 hours, became increasingly difficult to characterize as a State of the Union in any traditional sense. There was no coherent vision for foreign policy, no credible account of economic progress, and no real attempt to lay out an agenda. What filled that time instead was a string of anecdotes and crowd acknowledgments, pointing to people in the room, praising them effusively, and basking in whatever applause followed. It was rambling in the most literal sense, and the impression it left was of an address shaped less by ambition than by a calculation of what he could get through without stumbling too badly. The visual dimension of the evening added another layer of discomfort. A photo circulated by journalist Aaron Rupar showing the discoloration of Trump's hand drew significant attention online, as did the image of Representative Al Green holding up a sign in plain view as Trump entered the chamber. Both moments cut through the pageantry in ways that were hard to ignore. What the State of the Union is supposed to offer, an honest accounting of where the country stands and where it is headed, was largely absent. In its place were invented statistics, vague boasts about foreign investment, and the familiar comfort of made-up numbers delivered with the confidence of someone who has long since stopped worrying about being fact-checked.
In 12 months, I secured commitments for more than $18 trillion pouring in from all over the globe. Think of it, much less than $1 trillion for 4 years versus much more than $18 trillion for 1 year. What a difference a president makes. A short time ago, we were a dead country. Now we are the hottest country anywhere in the world, the hottest.
Few topics energized Trump quite like announcements of foreign investment. And the reason is straightforward. They require no verification and produce immediate headlines. They are, in effect, ceremonial gifts from world leaders who have learned that flattery is the most efficient currency when dealing with this White House. The numbers get announced, Trump beams, and the actual details quietly evaporate. The dynamic was perhaps most vividly illustrated by the now widely circulated account of Mark Zuckerberg's visit to the White House. Asked by Trump how much Meta was investing in the United States, Zuckerberg, apparently caught off guard by the public nature of the question, offered a figure on the spot. His subsequent confusion about whether that number was meant to be shared publicly was telling. Trump's response, by all accounts, was indifference. The accuracy of the figure was beside the point. What mattered was the trophy, not the substance behind it. It is, in a sense, a mutually convenient arrangement. Trump gets a headline investment figure to wave around. Zuckerberg gets to perform patriotic generosity without meaningful scrutiny of where his company's money actually flows. Neither party has much incentive to press for specifics. From there, Trump moved on to Day, another reliable applause line for his base and another opportunity to trade in grievance rather than governance. The rambling continued, the thread remained elusive, and the speech pressed on.
DEI in America. This is the kind of corruption that shreds the fabric of a nation, and we are working on it like you wouldn't believe. So tonight, although started 4 months ago, I am officially announcing the war on fraud to be led by our great Vice President J.D. Vance. He'll get it done. Find enough.
The irony of J.D. Vance being positioned as a crusader against corruption was not lost on observers. Vance's political ascent was substantially bankrolled by Peter Thiel, making his anti-corruption posture a difficult one to take at face value. And with the most legally scrutinized president in modern American history standing directly in front of him, the choice of targets seemed, to put it generously, selective. But that contradiction fit neatly into the broader texture of the evening. The speech was not really an exercise in accountability or vision. It was a performance of self-congratulation delivered by a man who appeared increasingly untethered from the factual record. The accomplishments Trump celebrated were largely ones he had invented or inflated, and the applause lines he reached for were designed less to persuade than to reassure both his audience and himself. What has become increasingly clear is that the people around Trump have made a calculated decision. Keep him comfortable, keep him away from anything that requires sustained precision, and feed him a steady diet of affirmation. The result is an address like tonight's, long on self-praise, short on substance, and disconnected from the lived reality of the Americans it was ostensibly meant to address. Whatever came next in the speech, it arrived on the back of an evening that had already said more than intended.
We will never go back to where we were just a very short time ago. We're not going back. Today our border is secure. Thank you. Today our border is secure. Our spirit is restored. Inflation is plummeting. Incomes are rising fast. The roaring economy is roaring like never before. And our enemies are scared. Our military and police are stacked. And America is respected again, perhaps like never before.
In the end, the speech distilled down to a remarkably simple formula. The economy is great, and Biden is bad. Repeated, recycled, and offered in place of anything resembling a substantive agenda. For an address of this length and occasion, it was a remarkably thin return. The visuals told their own story. The discoloration, the disorientation, the stretches where even loyal Republicans seemed unsure whether enthusiasm was warranted, it all added up to an evening that raised more questions than it answered about the man currently holding the most consequential office in the world. What tonight made clear, perhaps more than anything, is that the opposition cannot afford to simply show up and react. If the midterms are to mean anything, Democrats will need to arrive with sharper purpose, greater discipline, and a willingness to forcefully challenge a presidency that has so far been allowed to operate in a fog of its own invention. The contrast is there to be drawn. The question is whether the political will exist to draw it. The fight is far from over. If anything, evenings like this one are a reminder of what is at stake and why disengagement is not an option.